showing you how to replace a chain. Why would you replace a chain? Well, you might replace it because it's worn, because it's rusty, or because it's snapped. So we're going to replace the chain on this bike today, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So one thing you need to know before you replace a chain, or before you purchase the chain, is which chain do you need. There's several different chains according to how many gears your bike has. So for instance, if it has no gears, you just need a single speed chain. If it has 5, 6, 7 or 8 gears, you need one specific chain for that. A 9 speed has its own chain, a 10 speed has its own chain, and an 11 speed has its own chain. So let's have a look how many gears this one's got, and we'll know which chain we need. So counting from the bottom, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is a 7-speed block, so we need a 7-speed chain. So here's one I prepared earlier. We have a new chain in the box here, and it shows us on the box there that it's 5 to 7 speed. So we know that this does 5, 6 or 7 speed. It'll also actually do an 8 speed as well, but it tells us there that it's 5 to 7 speed. It actually tells us the length as well, 116 links on the back, which means that it will do this particular bike, but we're going to set the length. I'm going to show you how to do that. So how do you get the chain off the bike first? Well, if the chain was fitted from the factory, the chances are it won't have what's called a speed connector. This bike has got a speed connector because it's had the chain replaced at some point, but I can show you what a speed connector is because we're actually going to fit a new one. So a speed connector is literally a connector that you don't really need a tool for. It allows you to sort of remove the chain and put it back on again without having to actually physically split it, which is useful for cleaning especially. So we're going to fit one of these to this bike. Now it already has one fitted, so we can actually just take the chain off, but I'm going to show you how to remove it if there wasn't a speed link as well. So always put the bike in the 2 smallest gears because the chain's easiest to work with when it's like that. So I've got the smallest gear there and the smallest gear there. If you have no gears at the front, then that doesn't matter, just put it in the smallest gear at the back. Because this has 3 gears in the front, we're going to put it in the smallest gear there. And we're going to look for an odd looking link. Now there it is. So you can see that link there, slightly different from the rest. It's got 2 little delves in it there, and it's got a silver back. Now this is a slightly different speed connector to the one that I showed you there, in the fact that that's in like 2 staggered pieces, whereas this is just a faceplate comes off it. So I know full well that this link comes off just by snapping it. So you see it fall off? Yeah. There's the bit there that come off. I'll put that where we're not going to lose it. And then that literally just pops off like that, and then the chain's off. What I'm going to do as well, I'm going to put that back on, and I'm going to show you how to replace it if that link hadn't been there. How to remove it if that link hadn't been there. So there we go. So most of the videos I do don't include special tools. I purposely try and avoid tasks that need special tools. On this occasion you do need a special tool, and I think if you're starting to get into the realms of replacing chains, bottom brackets, cranks, things like that, you do need to start purchasing a few, albeit small tools. You don't have to go out and spend £1,000 on a toolbox, but it's worth nipping to your local store or even going online and finding a few little bits and bobs. So as these videos progress, I'll start mentioning some of the things that you might want to buy to put in your toolbox, and this is certainly one of them. This is a chain tool. You don't need to buy one as big as this. This gets obviously quite a lot of use, so we've bought a slightly heavier duty one. You can get one for around sort of £5, £7. You'll get a pretty decent one for that. So what this does is it actually pushes the chain apart, so you can see there's some plates where the chain sits, and this pin just literally pushes the pin out and pushes the chain apart. So we're going to do that. So I'm going to pick a link here, and I'm going to put it on there, so you can see there it lines up, and then that just pushes that centre pin through. So as I tighten that, you can see at the back it's starting to push that pin out. And if I push it too far, the pin will just pop out, it's fine. But I tend to try and keep it where the pin stays in. So I'm going to go to about there, wind that back out, and then that should pop apart. There you go. So I'm going to take that off now. So I'll have to feed that through the derailleur, like so. And there we have it, the chain is removed. So, as I've already mentioned, there's 116 links in this chain. Now we're going to sit and count all these links and figure out how long the chain is.
I'm not.
I'm certainly not either. So there's a couple of things you can do. The first thing you could do if you wanted to would be to put the two chains together. So you could open this chain up like so, and you could lay them together on like a table or something like that. It's quite a difficult way of doing it, if I'm honest. So you could see, so you can already see that our chain, the new chain, is actually longer than the one that we've got there.
Yeah.
So we know it's going to fit, it's certainly going to be long enough. But as the chain stretches, what you tend to find is that the links line up for so long, but then they start to drop off. So they don't quite, you can see there, they're not quite lined up anymore. So by the time you get to the bottom, sometimes, depending how bad your chain's worn, you might add an extra link in or something. So I don't do it like that. What I do is actually fit the new chain to the bike and then set the length on the bike. You can't go wrong then, you know that it's right. How do we know that that chain was right in the first place? It may have been slightly too long or slightly too short. So I'm going to feed the bike chain onto the bike. And remember I said about the two small cogs? We're going to use the two small cogs again. And the reason for that is that this derailleur here, this is this thing that changes the gears at the back, it has a few jobs. Not only does it change gear, one of the jobs it does is it keeps the chain tensioned. You may have recalled, I've said before, that this moves back and forth and this body moves to keep the chain tensioned. But it doesn't only keep the chain tensioned, it actually adjusts the chain length. So when you're in a big gear at the front, that moves forward and gives you some chain to allow the chain to be up here. As you sort of start going down gears, it does this and takes the tension back up, so it takes in the chain that you don't need anymore. And it does the same on the back. As you go up to a gear here, you need slightly more chain, so it'll move forward and it'll allow a bit more chain to go, to allow that to go into gear. So this actually does adjust the size of the chain as well according to the gear. So because it does that, it needs to take up as much slack as it possibly can. So when you're in the two smallest gears, that's the least amount of chain you're going to use. So therefore, this derailleur has to take up all the rest of that slack and hold it ready for when you want to change gear. So what you do is you set that chain length while it's in the smallest gear. So you can see already that chain's far too long. See, there. And what you want is, that's actually at rest there, it's not really doing anything. And what's nice to have is if it's just pulling it very slightly, so it's starting to take up the load. Otherwise you might get a bit of chain slap and it might not quite take up the tension. So we've got one there, we've got, now remember you need two, see the differences here? You need these two open ends here with no pin in. You can put a speed link in there. If you remember how the speed link works, I'll show you. One half of it goes in there and the other half goes in there, and that's how it joins it together. So we have to make sure that when we've got this chain to the right length, we allow one link, because we are going to add this link in, and also we're left with two open ends. Otherwise we can't get the speed link to fit. So how do we do that? We keep one end and we go, right, we're going to line it up to, so if you imagine we took that piece of chain out and that would leave us with that open end there, and we're going to actually substitute that piece with our speed link, aren't we? So it'd go there like that. Now you can see that's already pulling the derailleur a little bit, which is, if you remember what I said we needed. So I'm going to take out this section of chain here, and that'll leave us with that end and that end the same. So let's try it. If you're unsure, play it safe and take less out than you think you need, because once you've took it off, strictly speaking, you shouldn't be fitting it back on again. So take, if you think, well, I'm not quite sure, then just leave one extra link in, because then if it's not quite right, you can take another piece out. So we take that piece off, so you can see there, that piece has come off, and that's left us with two open ends that that speed link will fit into. So that end goes on there. That end goes on there. If you're struggling with this, you can get someone to push this derailleur down for you, which will give you a bit more slack. The further that goes forward, as I say, the more chain it gives you. So you could get someone just to push that down for you to give you a bit more tension. or you can use what some people do. They get a piece of wire coat hanger or a spork and they make a letter C, and then they just hook the chain together while you're working on it. But I've always done it a little bit cack-handed like this. So the chain's on there, and we have to slide these two pieces together. There we go. So that chain's on. Now it was very easy to get that on there, wasn't it? So just make sure that's connected. You can see there's no space, and then what you can see is it actually just makes a link, and that's got the tension, hasn't it? I think we're right there. So we can give it a try and go through the gears, make sure it's sitting well. Back down again, and then we can check this tension on this chain, make sure that it's got, the derailleur is holding it all, which I think it is there. That chain's got hold of that. Now if you wanted to go a little bit tighter, you could take another link out, which would of course make it do that and pull the chain forward, but that's pretty good there. It's not bottoming out, it's pulling the chain. And have we got enough to go up the gears? So there, we're in that gear there, so we're in the big gear there. So the longest the chain ever needs to be is when we're in the two big gears, which isn't a great gear to use, but to be honest, because you're on such an extreme angle that you wear your drivetrain out very quickly. So I would always say, if you do find yourself using the big gear and a big gear up here, maybe drop down to the middle gear and a little bit further down the block. Still, to check the length of the chain, we're going to go into that gear just to make sure that there's enough chain to go into that gear, which there is. So you can see we're in the big gear, the derailleur's come right forward. It's given us the amount of chain that we need quite easily, so we know that that chain's of good length. And just to double check, we'll go back down to the smallest gear. We'll go the smallest at the back, which again is an extreme gear that you shouldn't really be using, but we're using it for the purpose of getting the chain to length. And you can see there, that derailleur there has got hold of the chain. It's not hanging. If it was too long, it'd be doing that. It'd be hanging down. Of course, it isn't. It's up like that, so that's okay. So that's how you set your chain to length. That chain's now good to go. You put a little bit of lube on it if you want to, because the lubrication that comes with the chain when you first get it is more for storage than anything else. So it might be worth just putting a little bit of GT85 TF2 in a cloth, giving it a rub over, and then just maybe re-oiling it again with a bit of 85 or TF2 if you wanted to, or specific chain lube if you wanted. So that's how you set your chain, so you replace your chain. One thing I haven't mentioned is that if your chain is really badly worn, your rear cassette probably going to be as well, and probably so is your front chain ring. So if this is quite badly worn, you usually notice it because instead of nice curves like this, it looks a little bit like a shark's fin. It sort of curves up one side. You can see these first gears here have got a little bit of that starting there, so that if you look at that tooth there, if all of your teeth start to look like that, like a little sharky tooth type thing, then the chances are you're going to need a cassette. If you put a new chain on, you can check the gears will be fine, but then when you ride it, it jumps because the chain's not worn to the cassette. Your old one was perfectly fine because they were both worn together. So sometimes you may need to put a chain and a cassette on, and even sometimes a crankset, but it's always worth trying the chain first. You can get tools that check the chain length and check the wear for you, but as always I try and avoid doing repairs the way you need specialist tools. On this occasion we've used a chain tool. If you want to make a little coat hanger hook to hook them together, you could do that. And if you want to use a pair of long nose pliers, if you're struggling with the speed link, you can use some pliers to clip them together. You can actually get a tool that actually puts them together, but the good speed links, you can just see how easy they are. They just by hand straight away, they click on. So as always, thank you for watching. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions about what we've just done, drop us a comment, send us an email, and I'll see you next time.